Devon coast in southwest England. Here, an experiment is taking place. People have set up a biosphere reserve to look into the future. The Biosphere Reserve covers a huge coastal area in danger of serious damage from sea level rise as our climate gets warmer. But do local people know what the Biosphere Reserve is?
The biosphere? Not really, no.
It's a big greenhouse, isn't it?
No idea at all, honestly.
Of the what?
The Biosphere Reserve?
Vaguely. Very vaguely. Probably not enough to talk about.
It probably means we pay more.
Oh, perhaps it does.
But I didn't know it was whatever you said it was, a Biosphere Reserve. How wonderful.
A key motive behind biospheres is to alert people to their surroundings.
It doesn't surprise me that there's not many people who've heard of the Biosphere Reserve. The message has been put out lots of times. People have probably heard the message.
I had heard of it, but I couldn't remember the name of it.
What is important is about the values and the qualities behind it, not so much the name of the concept itself.
Biospheres are not domes in the middle of the countryside like the famous Eden project in southwest Britain. They are living laboratories where people with an eye on the future respond to changes in their environment. Biospheres were created by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. There are 531 biosphere reserves around the world. To share experience, the British Biosphere has twinned itself with the Malindi and Watamu Reserve in Kenya. The regions have much in common. Both have a beautiful coastline attractive to tourists. Both have habitats endangered by unsuitable development. Both have conflicts between man and nature.
The Man in the Biosphere programme was brought about because clearly there are those conflicts between humankind and nature. You could say the biosphere reserves, their foundation is in conflict areas.
Andy Bell coordinates this British biosphere in a disused railway station in Bideford. He has the tricky job of dealing with the conflicts between man and nature, which the biosphere can help to resolve.
The whole thing about biosphere reserves is they are about real people, real places and real lives. It is about futures, it is their futures.
It is a new kind of concept that really looks at things in an integrated way, whole system-wide thinking, as opposed to that's nature and that's society. So Biosphere Reserve is really the theatre for that kind of action and debate and discussion.
One of the critical debates is about preserving habitats. On a section of ground previously earmarked for urban development, volunteers are building fences around an area they hope will become a habitat for otters.
That's it.
Otters like to lie in a bit of peace and quiet, secluded places during the day, so what we're doing here is creating one of those places.
A key problem affecting southwest Britain is sea level rise caused by global warming. To predict the future, Andy is using LiDAR, a new technique, a mixture between laser beams and radar. It is showing that sea level rise is not only inevitable, but gradual.
Getting people to understand the concept that, yes, 2.5 millimetres a year does actually sort of mean quite a lot. And when you mount that up over the years, and it will accelerate over the coming years, it's quite difficult because we want to desensitise them so that you can get them to make a good sort of head decision as opposed to heart decision.
A head decision that has already been taken is to create salt marshes from grazing land.
We know that we're going to lose about 20% of our salt marsh over the next 20 years within the estuary due to sea level rise alone. So we need to replace these salt marshes because they do provide significant flood defence in its own right, or as a coastal defence. If you have salt marsh in front of a sea wall, the sea wall doesn't have to be nearly as big or nearly as resilient, because the salt marsh actually takes out that energy of the waves and the tide as it comes up towards those defences.
There has been little argument about creating salt marshes, but in the biosphere, one conflict area that has provoked huge debate is the impact of sea level rise just down the coast. The south side of the estuary is protected by a huge ridge of grey pebbles. In the last couple of years at high tides, the waves have made a gap in the ridge and have started to smash down the low cliffs behind the beach. The sea is flooding the land, and many local people are not happy. In the past, the council would repair the ridge by moving pebbles into the gaps with heavy machinery. But in the last few years, the policy for the pebble ridge has changed, allowing the sea to flood the land behind, known locally as the burrows. Local councillors like Andrew Eastman think that is wrong.
My issue is protect the ridge now, rebuild it to prevent the water from inundating that and thus buy us some more time to this very, very unfortunate scenario. If we were foolish enough to adopt this crazy policy of do nothing, in years to come, in generations to come, I do not want to be held responsible for being one of those who have just done nothing to prevent this very, very valuable asset of ours being depleted to the sea and allowing the Mother Nature to regain what we've always taken for granted as our burrows to enjoy.
Andy Bell is well aware of the lobby for beach repairs, but looks at the problem differently.
The modelling we've done for the next 100 years means we're going to have to start thinking about moving. We can't play, King Canute to try and stop things all the time. We can't keep on putting millions and millions of pounds into holding a situation that isn't really sustainable. There has to be a time when we move back.
Immediately behind the Pebble Ridge is a golf course, and that's in danger too. The Royal North Devon Golf Course, founded in 1864, is regarded as the St Andrews of England. Doug Bushby is chairman of the golf club and is not happy that the 7th tee is being drastically reduced by the waves.
The Pebble Ridge has been depleted to such an extent it's almost as flat as the beach itself. And with each incoming tide, the edge of the sand dune area is being eroded quite dramatically. With each tide, even the wind and rain is having an effect.
In the past, the locals had a tradition called pot walloping, where they threw pebbles back up the beach to preserve the ridge.
Historically, the pot walloping, it was something that local people used to do just to throw pebbles back onto the Pebble Ridge by hand.
With the change in policy to the beach repairs, some of the locals are very disappointed.
It's obviously very good for, wading birds and things of that nature, but not very good for the users of the burrows at the moment.
And there's another problem on the burrows. It contains an old, unregulated landfill tip, now grassed over. Some worry that the sea could expose the waste contaminating the area. Alistair Barkley saw what was thrown into the dump.
The amount of rubbish that went in here is incredible. It's an unregulated tip. People were coming out at night and dropping all sorts of things in here. One of the main things was the asbestos. A lot of the asbestos was dropped in here, and various lorries came from other areas and dropped chemicals in here. It's been denied by Devon County Council. They've done borings on here, and it's been denied that any hazardous material. But I'm afraid they're wrong.
With reports that come out about surveys of this, that and the other, there will always be suspicion. There's always the theories that there is some kind of conspiracy going on there. I believe that this report is actually sort of genuine. The chemical analysis of the water that's done by the Environment Agency in the past that I've seen suggests that most of actually the bad stuff has actually been washed out already.
Well, it means that they feel they haven't got a responsibility to do anything because they've proved there's no problem. And once you prove there's no problem, they won't do anything. But there is a problem. Undeniably, there's a problem. We're standing on it.
I'm not surprised people have their suspicions. There's been a lot of rumours around that for a long time. And it will take an awful lot more than one report to try and turn those suspicions around.
But someone who takes a geological perspective on rising sea levels is Peter Keane. He has studied the burrows since he was a child.
There's no doubt the burrows in a geological timescale is going to disappear, as it has done many times in the past. The last time sea level approached the present time was about 125,000 years ago, and that was 8 metres higher than present sea level. But that's enough to mean really that the sea level reoccupied the sea floor everywhere that it had previously abandoned. So here we've got a temperature chart for southern England. It's also a chart which shows rise and fall in sea level. During the warm periods, the areas which are shown in red, we have high sea levels. The areas of the troughs between are times of low sea level. So world sea level, and certainly for these last 4 episodes, were about 120 metres lower than they are at the present day. Bideford Bay would disappear and you could have walked across to Wales.
The geology of the coast also provides the answer to the mystery of how the pebbles got to be on the beach in the first place.
If you go along the coast, you can see that great chunks of the cliffs are moving down in the form of landslips. Chunks of sandstone will fall to the beach. But that must have provided an enormous amount of debris which fed the system to produce pebbles. Trundled by the waves, when they're small enough, they begin to move along shore.
To measure the effects of sea level rise on the Pebble Ridge, the students of Bideford College are carrying out a survey. They are calculating what will happen as the climate warms. They have made a website called The Big Climate Thing. They take photos to get the idea of flooding across to others. They have purposely exaggerated the effect to bring the point home.
It's made me aware of how climate change is affecting our local area, especially by the river and by the beaches. We've been looking at the Pebble Ridge and how it's retreating and how the sea is eroding it and causing this change and what effects it will have on the land behind it.
I don't think anybody's that aware of it at the moment because there hasn't been enough publicity about it, so nobody really knows that much about when it's going to happen and what, if it does, what is going to happen.
We were looking at different pebbles at different sections along the ridge. Larger pebbles haven't been there for as long. Smaller pebbles have been there for a long time because they've been eroded away. Sections of the ridge have a lot smaller pebbles, which means that section's weak, so it might break sometime in the future. We're looking at that because if the sea levels get too high, then weaker sections may break in the future and cause damage to local areas.
I wasn't really sure the extent of the damage it could cause, and I didn't really know what individuals could do to stop it. But now, having done the website, we looked at all the ways, simple things like turning off lights and stuff that everyone can do to help, and it does make a difference.
If the Biosphere Reserve is a forum to cope with the rising tide of concern about sea levels, it fulfills a useful purpose. But there is another factor at play: money.
To defend the boroughs as they stand today would be enormously expensive. If there were a nuclear power station there, or if there was the will to do so, to spend the money, then it could be done. But if nature is to be allowed to take its course, then in fact it is curtains for northern boroughs.
The Biosphere Reserve in Britain is twinned with a Kenyan biosphere in Malindi and Watamu on the coast. The idea is to share experience and develop an understanding of each other's problems.
There's some interesting similarities there that we thought were worth exploring. This would be a pilot for other reserves to follow. so that you could have other north-south collaboration.
Travelling to the Kenyan Biosphere to meet the committee who run the project in Malindi and Watamu. There is strong community spirit here, but they have other problems.
About climate change also, this is something that is globally and everywhere, but at least we need something also to do about it.
There were so many trees in Mikoko which you could not penetrate. Today, the whole thing is empty, and we had so many sensitive habitats, areas along here, but they are not there because the people are not looked after.
The main problem is poverty, and poverty is what brings the mangrove deforestation, the coral reef effects, poaching, and overfishing.
The problem here, what we're talking about, here we have to fight corruption. Corruption is the main cause of everything, and also poor leadership.
We are residents of this place. We know the deeper feelings of the people. So we know how to handle the people. We know how to talk to the people. If you are given a chance, we can do a lot.
Poverty is a major cause of problems in the Kenyan biosphere. Andy Bell and his counterpart Paul Mackenzie have come to see how the new initiative of twinning could help.
I noticed you've been talking about some of the real big issues that affect this particular area, and likewise in North Devon in the UK we have some of those same problems. As we develop our solutions and you develop your solutions, we can share, and this will be, we hope, the flagship, the special one in Kenya that leads the way.
Devon and Kenya have concerns in common. Climate change and sea level rise affects both coastlines. They depend on tourism for their income and prosperity. Wildlife habitats are threatened both by humans and natural causes. Coral reefs and marshlands need scientific evaluation and planning for protection. In both countries, development directly affects the environment. The biosphere status in Kenya is promoting a change in focus. In the recent past, it was estimated that 20% of the total mangrove forest has been lost along the Kenyan coast. Some has been cleared for agriculture and housing, some destroyed to produce salt factories, and some polluted by oil spills. Now the people themselves are encouraged to take an active part looking after the mangroves.
For a long time, the approach has been that one of separating, protecting the human beings from their natural resources. That way you find that human beings will do things illegal, and they can do it if they are set away from their resources. So the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve approach is to reconcile human and nature, and it is working.
This place is very special, and mangroves are very important to the community because first and foremost, the mangroves are the hatcheries for fish, which are being caught in the creek.
They are not only a source of nourishment, but vital building materials.
We also have mangroves very important to the communities because they are the only building source they have, because most of the communities are very poor. They are depending on the mangroves to build their houses.
Careful harvesting is now replacing destruction of the mangroves.
The other thing is tourists are visiting this place to see some migratory birds like flamingos. Those people cannot be coming here if we don't have the mangroves, because the birds are coming to the mangroves, and if they are not here, the birds won't come, and eventually the tourists won't be coming to see flamingos here.
Under the new Biosphere project, destroyed mangrove forests are being replanted. Sea level rise is affecting communities the world over. Here in the Kenyan biosphere, it has severely damaged the beachfront. One of the jewels of the Biosphere Reserve is the beach where sea turtles come to lay their eggs. Locals from the committee are measuring the damage, but a full-scale survey has yet to be done. Turtles are precious to the community. Protecting them is now taken seriously, and when disasters do happen, a beach burial is a dignified affair.
What we have here is Watamu's Marine Park Beach. It's one of Kenya's main and most important turtle nesting beaches. What we're seeing here over the last years, especially since 2004, is a rapid increase in erosion. These trees were once part of what we call the 30-metre reserve, which is from the top of the high-level watermark of the beach going inland. And that's a very important and fragile habitat. So with the increase in erosion, what we've seen is a loss of that habitat. And so now the turtles are forced to nest in the central part of the beach where the nests are in danger of being washed away and destroyed. And so climate change, rising sea levels, we're concerned that that might be playing a strong role in this erosion event.
Climate change in the Kenyan biosphere is also affecting its rivers. Mud and silt from the Sabaki River drains into the sea and stifles the coral reef. There has been little research, but it's easy to see the discharge by the colour of the water.
There's been some good projects going on in the past, and we've understood, from some of the research that's gone there, but there is a real lack of information and data to help people to make decisions about how their coast is going to change. And so where we've had the luxury of having some of the top quality consultants in the UK, we've got access to technology like LiDAR, which gives us that nice 3D modelling. There's nothing like that here.
Just as in Britain, feelings run high about protecting the coastline. New hotel developments are in the eye of a storm about damaging the beachfront. In the Blue Lagoon, an exquisite natural bay, a new development has been stopped because the locals protested. Andy is being shown the problem by members of the committee.
We don't know exactly what is happening with the government's laws and regulations because first thing, there's no consultation. We are just seeing things happening. So investors are just coming and they're just doing developments. So we are appealing for the government to involve us so that we can participate to stop this unsustainable development because it's now destroying everything in our life.
The tourists are coming here because of the unique of this place. So if we end up changing our coastal landscape, after 10 years, tourism will go down.
There's been some interesting sort of ideas and responses from the community, particularly with the reaction to the hotel development at Blue Lagoon. How that's been a really strong reaction from the community against taking away their beachfront, and then the community understanding what their resources are. And that's been a really interesting surprise.
The biosphere's strengths will be different wherever they are formed. In Britain, the strong suit is scientific knowledge. In Kenya, it's community consciousness. Maybe that's what they can learn from each other. But perhaps more important still is that people become aware of the fact that biospheres exist at all.
I don't think people on the street know what a biosphere is, and I think it's very important that they should know. Obviously in school we learn a lot about it, but the general public might not know, so I think if we get everyone informed, then everyone can act upon it and try and make a bit of a difference.